Hello, my name is Nicole, and thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Today, I want to share with you the aftermath of any of these natural disasters. Usually, there is the enemy at work. Even though the bad situation has already taken place, even though there is so much work to be done, the enemy is going to still reap all sorts of havoc upon people even after the events. Some of you all who have been in natural disasters and then afterward, you had to deal with your share of issues. And a lot of those issues don't make it to the front pages of websites. A lot of those issues don't make it to the newspaper. Okay, there's people who still dealing with so many problems from years ago, from the last natural disaster. And so we're going to talk about these things. And this message is to bring light to these issues so that folks will keep these things in mind and do what it takes to get things done. First of all, monies. Monies is always a big issue when a natural disaster takes place. Most people will say you're better off supplying the resources as opposed to giving cash. Why? Because people take money and use it to pay for themselves, for their agendas, for their just whatever they feel like paying for. Okay. Some people will take a lot to build up their businesses and then leave little for the people who really need the help. There are some people who still never got back to their property because there were all sorts of regulations, policies, procedures, laws, you name it, to keep them away from their property. Okay. So that is an issue where people don't return because of what government has said. People representing government, people saying that it's unsafe. Well, how long is it unsafe? Because I really want to get back home, and then still not being able to get back home. How about those individuals who ended up going through their share of dramas in the shelters? Thousands and thousands of people in shelters and having to watch their back and watch their children's backs as well. Because there's the pedophiles and the sexual predators. There's the child molesters and there's the drunkards. There's the people who didn't bring their prescription medicines. And there are folks around who don't even have a clue as to what they were taking. Then, of course, there are those who have their traumatic triggers and symptoms and whatever else that's going on. And so the atmosphere isn't always pleasant, nice, neatly organized, and smells good like what appears on television. What about the individuals who steal? These are the ones that's going to show up, and they're going to take at the shelters, and they're also going to take over there where the natural disaster took place, when the waters recede, when it looks like a ghost town. They're headed back to take whatever they can. The thieves are around during these times. What about the individuals who say things that are bizarre, that's strange, even some who will even tell blatant lies about the things that took place during the natural disaster? And they use all of their stories and their lies and whatever else to get whatever they want, whether it's fame, money, empathy, sympathy, whatever. And they end up making major news, while the people who really went through some things are on the back burner somewhere. What about the companies that rip the public off? They're trying to file claims. They're waiting on their money. They're trying to get things built up. And then here comes another standard, another policy, something that keeps them from getting things done, something that cuts their money short. Rip off companies. How about the children who are traumatized and don't receive mental help and some that don't even get medical help. And what about those adults as well? People overlooked. People who never got rescued. Dead bodies that were never recovered. There are things that take place that go beyond what we witnessed during the time the natural disaster took place. There is the aftermath. There are the folks who are capitalizing. There are the folks who are favored. There are the folks who rip off, the folks who lie, the folks who never got the help that they really needed. If you are in a position of influence, if you have a lot of workers on the ground, please uncover those little things, those small things, those things that other people are not paying attention to, like people's bodily needs. Pay attention to those things like brand new clothes as opposed to used, outdated, and defective clothing. Pay attention to things like expired foods. Oh, we sent them help, but the food is way past the expiration date. Make sure that people are getting quality things. Make sure that people are going to stick around long enough to be sure that those individuals get all the help that they need. And what about all of those photo ops? People who come in to sightsee. People who, I'm not here to help anybody. I'm just here to collect some photographs. I'm just here to say that I was here. I'm just here to interview a bunch of people, get some information to take back, to make some money. And the information that they receive, or the videos, or the things that they get, help no one. It's just for entertainment purposes. How about the fools? The fools who mock those who are in trouble, who use the situation for laughs. And what about those folks who are racist? Those individuals who overlook people of color. They get the best. They get the new. They get the things that aren't outdated. They get the electronics. They get the housing. While others don't get any of those things. And what about the excuse we ran out and many of the supplies are stuffed somewhere or put up or taken by corporations who resell them on the internet, or by individuals who do the same? Track where your giving is going. If you got to be there to make sure that what you're doing is in the hands of those who need it, then do that if you can. Because we know that sometimes, once again, government blocks off people from getting things done. A lot of folks posted up all sorts of imagery about these concentration camps, these places where individuals would be housed in the event that there would be a nuclear disaster or there would be some type of major issue that would cause everybody to have to leave their location. I think that we are looking at, personally, and I'm just feeling this all over my spirit, the beginning of more to come. And all of these shelters that were being put up that folks call concentration camps, now that I'm thinking deeply about these sort of things, I believe that all of these were put up to house people for some upcoming events, because those who are in control of many things knew what was ahead, and they knew people were going to need places to stay. And so I believe these facilities were available for all these different disasters ahead. And it's a really easy way to take some property from some people, especially if you are looking to develop in a community, in a city, in a town, in a borough, or even taking over an entire state. Lots ahead. Consider this a prophetic warning. Whatever you do, don't put your faith in your money or in your things. Understand that just as there are those disasters that we know God will allow to take place, there are also those disasters that are orchestrated by man, where God will use those situations to draw us near to Him, to help us in such a way where we are mentally, physically, and spiritually growing, to use us to help others who may not be mentally, physically, and spiritually growing, but they will now that all this stuff has happened, and then others who are even further away from the Lord as a result. If it is in your power to share the gospel with individuals, do just that, because the aftermath is rough. What they don't tell you is how many people suffer long with depression, with post-traumatic stress syndrome, with all sorts of sicknesses in head, in mind, and in body. They don't get into all of those things that took place with law enforcement and military, the orders that they were given that made people feel like their rights were violated in some way. They don't get into all of those things. You don't learn sometimes about these issues until many years later. So our hearts go out to every single individual that has been going through. We never know when our day is going to come where we're going to go through as well. That's why we stay humble. We don't act braggadocious. We don't talk about people deserving to go through anything, because where we are right now is not in a good place spiritually. And what I mean by that, and I'm saying as a nation, not individually, but as a nation, because there's just too much ugly that's going on with our leadership. And because there's so much ugly going on, there are those that's wishing evil, there are those that are doing evil, and there are those that simply want our country to be gone, to be done away with, and all the people in it. And when you got those kind of enemies, no telling what they are capable of doing, and no telling what God will allow, because God is fed up with some folks too. And we have seen where He has done much damage in the past as well as currently. If you take a look at the Old Testament, you will see that we do not serve a weak God, and we don't serve a God that is not about delivering justice. So that is it. May God's grace and mercy be upon you as well as those you love. Please do check the description box for anything that might be of interest. You've been listening to YouTube NM Enterprise 7. Subscribe today. Also, if you haven't given, we do welcome donations and thank you in advance. Many blessings to you.